On TV1, we present news and information through the night via satellite from BBC World.
The Rock Years on BBC World. Tune in and drop out.
World News next on BBC World.
The Business Report brings you the latest news and in-depth analysis, the definitive guide. Trade up to Asia Business Report, minding your business. Live from Singapore at these times on BBC World.
One programme goes to the ends of the earth to bring you world-class holiday information. Holiday in 30 minutes on BBC World.
"24 hours a day. This is BBC World."
The funeral is underway for the murdered president of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Laurent Kabila's son and heir pays his final respects. In Tiananmen Square, 5 members of the Falun Gong set fire to themselves. And Ecuador declares a state of emergency as oil threatens the Galapagos Islands. Hello, welcome to BBC World News. I'm Lindsay Brancher. The army in the Democratic Republic of Congo is on high alert for the funeral of the assassinated President Laurent Kabila. The ceremony in the capital, Kinshasa, is being attended by regional heads of state.
The funeral of Laurent Désiré Kabila, assassinated president of one of Africa's largest and most violent countries. The man who is the interim leader of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Joseph Kabila, the 31-year-old son of the dead president. His father's allies have come to pay their respects. Prominent amongst them, Robert Mugabe of Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe has troops here fighting the rebels. It also has substantial mineral rights to protect. After condolences to the family, the dignitaries were granted a final glimpse of the man who 4 years ago came out of the jungle to topple President Mobutu, the man who last week was shot by one of his own bodyguards. Unlike his predecessor, President Kabila is being buried with full honors in his own country, even though many of his people feel Congo's plight has scarcely improved from what it was under Mobutu. Now Congo faces the future with a young, untried leader who has some powerful allies, but uncertain support within his own country and even within his own government. Roger Hearing, BBC News.
The official Chinese news agency has reported that 5 members of the Falun Gong spiritual movement have set themselves on fire in Tiananmen Square in the center of Beijing. It said one had died and the others were taken to hospital. But a Hong Kong-based Falun Gong spokeswoman cast doubt on the report and suggested it was a plot by the Chinese authorities to discredit the movement. Our correspondent in Beijing, Adam Brooks, says little is known at present of what took place.
We just have the one report from the Xinhua news agency saying that these 5 practitioners came to Tiananmen Square today, which is Chinese New Year's Eve, doused themselves with gasoline and set themselves on fire. We have this report and only this report. Our offices in Beijing are not confirming the veracity of that report or otherwise. As I speak to you, I'm actually standing on Tiananmen Square, where security is extremely tight. The authorities are obviously geared up for trouble from Falun Gong this Chinese New Year, but there is no immediate evidence of any incident having taken place here.
The spokeswoman speaking from Hong Kong seemed to cast doubt over these reports.
Well, certainly Falun Gong seek to portray themselves as a movement that is not given to extreme measures. They constantly emphasize that they are a peaceful movement, that they emphasize peaceful protest, passive resistance to the Chinese government's ban on their practice. Now, the Chinese government, for its part, seeks to portray them as exactly the opposite. It seeks to portray them as extreme and claims that the movement is responsible for more than 1,000 deaths among its followers. So clearly it would be in the Chinese government's interest to portray these practitioners as imaging themselves as evidence of their extreme measures, and it would be in the interests of Falun Gong in Hong Kong to play that down.
Adam Brooks, the ousted Philippine president, has been banned from leaving the country, and steps have been taken to freeze bank accounts linked to him. The move by the government and tax authorities came as groups of protesters surrounded 2 banks in the capital, Manila, in a bid to prevent Joseph Estrada gaining access to his accounts. Mr. Estrada's impeachment trial on corruption charges collapsed last week in a dispute over access to bank statements. The president of Ecuador, Gustavo Noboa, has declared a state of emergency in the Galapagos Islands following a fuel spill, which is threatening the sensitive ecology of the area. Some of the diesel is now thought to have reached the island of Santa Fe, 60 kilometers west of San Cristobal, where the oil tanker first ran aground, and home to such rare animal species as the giant iguana.
US Coast Guards, who were leading the cleanup operation in San Cristobal, say most of the tanker's 250,000 gallons of oil and diesel now appear to have drained into the sea. It is a week since the Jessica ran aground and 4 days since her tanks ruptured and started polluting these unique waters. The islands are home to dozens of rare species, from sea lions to the finches studied by Darwin. It is the threat to this environment that has led to the president's declaration of a state of emergency. That has been welcomed by environmentalists who say any large-scale pollution in this area is a disaster. So far, the effects of the slick have not had a dramatic effect on the wildlife. Strong winds and currents have dragged the oil spill out to sea, limiting the damage along the shoreline. But a change in the weather could radically alter the situation. With bad conditions forecast, officials say there is still a very real chance of environmental disaster if the oil is washed back to San Cristobal. Richard Bilton, BBC News, the Galapagos.
Israeli and Palestinian negotiators in the Egyptian resort of Taba are holding their second day of talks. Officials on both sides have spoken of serious and intensive discussions, and there's speculation that parts of an agreement could be drafted as early as today.
Still talking, and now, after more than a day, some glimmers of hope too. Officials on both sides call the negotiations serious. In some areas, they may even be breaking new ground. They may want a deal, but is there time? Israelis go to the polls in exactly 2 weeks. The negotiators here know their efforts may be thwarted if a new hardline government takes over. It's concentrating minds, but raising doubts too. Israel's Prime Minister is still hoping to win on February the 6th, but knows that his chances are slim, with or without a deal. At a conference on peace and security in Tel Aviv, he said he was telling the painful truth to the people of Israel. In order to reach an agreement with the Palestinians, Israel had to give up more than 90% of the West Bank. But even though the overall level of violence has fallen, many Israelis will still be swayed by events on the ground. Another roadside bomb in the Gaza Strip injured an Israeli soldier on Monday. After 4 months of this, only the Prime Minister's most ardent supporters now give him any chance of winning. Paul Adams, BBC News, Taba.
In Colorado, police have captured 4 prisoners who escaped from a jail in Texas last month. 2 other inmates are still on the run, and police said they're heavily armed. Their breakout prompted a massive manhunt in several states and led to questions about security procedures at the prison, which houses some of the state's most dangerous criminals.
Woodland Park in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains, Colorado, where 3 of the so-called Texas 7 were arrested by the FBI. They'd been on the run for 41 days, posing at a local trailer park as members of a religious order. Officers had acted on a tip-off. A local woman had seen pictures of the men on television.
Had we not had information from the community that said we think that at least 3, if not 5 of these suspects from Texas are here in Teller County, we never would have been here.
A 4th member of the gang was arrested in a motorhome, while a 5th barricaded himself in before committing suicide with a single bullet to the chest. 2 escapees remain at large.
They are armed and extremely dangerous. They are, in fact, heavily armed. We know this based upon an interview of the subjects we have in custody. So this is good information.
The fugitives, known as the Texas 7, escaped from this prison near San Antonio, leaving through the gates in broad daylight after outwitting and overpowering 13 guards. Police believe the 2 men still at large may be hiding in Colorado's mountainous terrain. Nick Brandt, BBC News, Washington.
Temperatures in eastern Russia have fallen below -50 degrees Celsius as Siberia confronts its worst winter weather in living memory. Dozens of people have died in the past week. Many more have suffered terrible injuries from frostbite. An extreme cold front is sweeping across the region, and forecasters say there's worse to come in the days ahead. Our correspondent Caroline Wyatt reports from the city of Irkutsk in eastern Siberia.
Winter in Siberia may look stunning, but it's also deadly. January here is always harsh, but this is one of the coldest months in living memory. It's so cold that this man's moustache froze as he walked outdoors. Temperatures are as low as -53 degrees Celsius in the region of Irkutsk. Frostbite is the biggest danger, as 16-year-old Nastya found out. She's waiting to hear whether she'll lose the use of both hands. All she did was walk home after she missed her last bus. Truck driver Nikolai Dubtsov is recovering after his hands and feet were amputated. I listened to the weather forecast for Irkutsk, he says, but never imagined it could be that cold in the countryside. Nikolai's truck broke down in the middle of nowhere while he was delivering wood. For 6 desperate hours, he fought to repair it with his bare hands. He survived, but he may never work again. None of the victims of frostbite here had realized quite how quickly the cold could affect them. At -50 degrees Celsius, all it takes is half an hour with no gloves on. And at those temperatures, breathing becomes difficult, and even the water in your eyes freezes up. The cold is inescapable indoors too. The heating at Natasha Filipova's flat barely works. It's difficult to sleep when there's ice on the bedroom wall. The bathroom is the only place warm enough for the children to do their homework, but at least they can afford winter clothes, unlike some others.
Some people don't have the money to buy these winter clothes, and they go out without shoes, without gloves, because they simply don't have them. And we've been to many institutions, orphanages and boarding schools, where kids can't go to school because they have no winter shoes.
State institutions are running out of cash. Resources at this TB clinic are strained at the best of times. Extra heating is an expense it can ill afford. The air inside is foul. But it's too cold for patients to go out to get the fresh air they need. An energy crisis is looming, even though this Siberian coal mine, one of Russia's biggest, is still working. It's simply that distribution is so bad that villages just 2 miles away have no heating. Despite all that, there are few signs of public anger at the lack of government aid. Just a stoic acceptance that life in Siberia is harsh, and that man is no match for the elements. Caroline Wyatt, BBC News, Irkutsk.
Some sports news. Andre Agassi will face Pat Rafter for a place in the final of the Australian Tennis Open in Melbourne. Rafter has come through a tough quarter-final clash with Dominik Hrbatý of Slovakia in 4 sets. Rafter won the first set 6-2, but Hrbatý came back at him in the second, winning it in a tie-break and then moving into a lead in the third. Rafter rallied, however, and eventually took the third set 7-5 and eased through the fourth set, taking it to love. Earlier, Andre Agassi, the 6th seed, had a relatively comfortable straight sets victory over fellow American Todd Martin. Agassi has therefore reached his 20th Grand Slam semi-final. And there was another All-American clash in the women's singles, with Jayappa Capriati coming from a set down to beat former 4-time Australian Open champion Monica Seles. Capriati will now face defending champion Lindsay Davenport, who was a comfortable winner in her quarter-final against Russia's Anna Kournikova. Davenport winning the match in just over an hour, 6-4, 6-2, the score there. Cricket, and another morale-sapping defeat for the West Indies to report from the Tri-Nation Series in Sydney. They've been beaten by Zimbabwe, the margin 47 runs, and it could have been much worse. Put into bat after losing the toss, Zimbabwe were bowled out for 138 in the 48th of their allotted 50 overs. The West Indies then slumped to 31 for 8, in real danger of registering the lowest ever total in the one-day game, currently at 43. Captain Jimmy Adams and Nixon McLean put on 60 for the 9th wicket before Adams and the last man, Cameron Cuffey, were out in the space of 3 balls. Heath Streak was named man of the match for his 45 with a bat and 4 for 8 with the ball. And our main news again this hour: dignitaries and officials have been paying their last respects and laying wreaths near the coffin of the assassinated Congolese President Laurent Kabila, who is due to be buried in around 90 minutes from now. And that's all from our newsroom for the moment.
Find out why our customers in more than 60 countries say Zamel Steel is a pleasure to do business with. Contact us for your steel building needs.
Will George W. Bush's policies get a cool reception? Are dot-com companies skating on thin ice? Is the global economy facing meltdown? Nick Gowing is in Switzerland to assess the climate with business and political leaders at the World Economic Forum in Davos. Don't be left out in the cold. The World Debate, at these times on BBC World.
You're watching BBC World. We bring you up to date with the latest financial news now in World Business Report.
French shoppers keep their money in their pockets. Is this the beginning of a European slowdown? And Deutsche Telekom's figures add to fears for telecom stocks. Hello, welcome to World Business Report. I'm Jamie Robertson. Now, some disappointing figures out from France, economic figures. Consumer spending is down following 4 months of growth. Consumers are fighting shy of buying bigger items like cars and furniture, but they are spending on things like clothes and leather goods, which actually rose slightly. And it makes sense when you look at the results out from LVMH, the world's biggest luxury goods company. Fourth quarter sales there are up 31%, and that's led by demand for perfume and cologne. Well, joining me now on the line from Paris is Dominique Barbet. He's senior economist at BNP Paribas. Do these figures worry you? We've had some fairly good growth figures in consumer spending. Now that seems to have tailed off. And, of course, it coincides with problems in the US.
No, I'm not overly worried by these figures. Indeed, we had a series of good data, and altogether the fourth quarter is coming quite robust. What is making me really confident is the consumer survey, which has been showing recently that confidence is at its highest ever. So I'm not too much worried, and moreover, to the question whether it's a good time to make important purchases, consumers tend to reply yes. And the difference between yes and no increased by 6 points in the December survey. So I'm quite sure that in January we will see much better outcome for the consumption.
Do you think there's any need then for the European Central Bank to lower interest rates? I mean, can you see any need across any sectors in France or in Europe?
Not really, apart from the car sector. The French consumers do not much rely on credit. I mean, they rely less than in most other countries, developed countries, especially UK or US. The only sector is the car sector, and today's figures are very much distorted. The INSEE has been trying to fix that up, but the reliability of the car sales is very limited in December this year for a technical reason. So I think we will see a rebound in January.
Okay, Dominique Barbet, thanks very much indeed. The online gambling service, SportingBet.com, has been priced for its listing on the London Alternative Investment Market, or AIM, today. It hopes to use the money to it raises to fund its expansion and marketing programs around the world, including, controversially, America, where gambling is illegal in many states. With the details, here's Karen Haynes of our business staff.
SportingBet.com says it has over 50,000 customers in 103 countries, all keen to use its online and telephone betting service. But the company has big plans to expand its business. The company even hopes to attract customers in America, where it's not illegal to bet on the internet, but it is illegal to provide betting online. Laws aside, SportingBet.com is confident there's a huge global market out there just waiting to be tapped into.
The gambling market is an extremely global market. The projections, if you believe some analysts, they say it's a $50 billion US dollar market within the next 4 years. And that's really growing up from almost nothing at the moment. There are enough fans, there are enough people willing to take a flutter on any type of sporting event that actually shows that there is quite a bit of promise here.
Undaunted by a collapse in high-tech stocks such as Boo, Breathe and Let's Buy It, SportingBet.com is pushing ahead with its flotation in an attempt to fund its expansion plans. Today it announced it's raised over $26 million, pricing its shares at $1.76 each. That values the firm at $227 million. Trading of SportingBet.com shares are expected to begin on London's alternative investment market on January the 30th. Karen Haynes, BBC News.
Well, some fairly impressive figures came out from the German telecoms giant Deutsche Telekom, but they were not as impressive as many had hoped for, and the shares fell over 2% in Frankfurt. The big number was a six-fold increase in profits to $7 billion, but much of that was bloated by one-off income, the sale of stakes in cable TV operations, for instance, and other telecom companies, and also cash from the flotation of its T-Online internet unit. Indeed, its fourth quarter figures show a loss of $930 million. Now, that's twice as bad as most forecasters had been expecting. Japan's economics minister has resigned after just 6 weeks in the job. Fukushiro Nukaga stepped down after being accused of taking more than $100,000 from a scandal-hit insurance company. He is to be replaced by Taro Aso, a 60-year-old former head of the Economic Planning Agency. Meanwhile, the Japanese economy continues to struggle. Sluggish consumer spending is, of course, a predominant fear, but there are also worries about the US slowdown. Some believe that Japan could now really be headed back into recession and into another financial crisis. Charles Scanlon reports from Tokyo.
Signs of an economic downturn are not immediately apparent in the center of Tokyo. Japan is still a very rich country, and here in the affluent Ginza district, it certainly feels like it. But even here, there are telltale signs that not all is well. The Sogo department store, a well-known landmark, is being gutted by workmen after the chain went bankrupt last year. Fears of further corporate failures have kept the Tokyo stock market on a downward track for several months. The index is hovering just above the low point it reached in the last recession.
I don't think things will be much worse than today, but I'm also don't know that we are going to be better.
Fundamental problems of the economy are just not being addressed, says this man. The government keeps postponing reform. Our incomes are not going up, and I can't see any improvement. 30 kilometers to the east in commuter country, a deep-seated anxiety has taken hold. Koji Tanaka earns a middle-class salary as an assistant manager with a leading supplier of fire safety equipment. The company pays for his flat and he saves a large slice of his salary. But he's lost what used to be taken for granted in Japan, the guarantee of a job for life.
雇用っていうのになると非常に厳しいと思いますね。
It's not so easy for college graduates to find a job anymore. The security has gone. My own company is going through a restructuring this year. I cannot see the economy picking up at all. It's going to continue like this for another 10 or 15 years.
The Tanakas are much more frugal than they used to be. No more high-priced department stores and foreign brands. Now they're always on the lookout for a bargain. Retail spending in Japan has fallen for 44 consecutive months.
Even the January sales have failed to bring out the crowds at this department store in a Tokyo suburb. That's partly because of the downturn in the economy. But this shop has also been hit by competition from two new foreign-owned superstores that have opened just up the road.
The French supermarket Carrefour opened at the end of last year and immediately proved there is pent-up consumer demand in Japan if the price is right. It's cut through the notorious distribution system and is offering cheaper prices than the Japanese have ever seen before. The foreign interlopers are threatening to revolutionize Japanese consumer habits. But for some economists, falling prices spell danger.
To some extent, this deflation is a good thing. But there's still an aspect of a macro sort of recession. You know, Japanese economy has not quite recovered. So there's that element of lack of demand, particularly consumption demand. So that we should continue to be concerned about the deflation, I think.
After 10 years of stagnation, no one in Japan is under any illusions. The country's economic malaise looks set to continue until consumers can somehow be persuaded there is hope for the future. Charles Scanlon, BBC News, Tokyo.
Now, let's have a look at those markets, see where they're standing. They're not looking particularly healthy. The worry is really the high-tech stocks. Some of the names of the decliners: Marconi, Alcatel, Ericsson, Philips. Dresdner Kleinwort Benson has downgraded Nokia, which came as a bit of a shock. And also we've had profits warnings from Texas Instruments. That hit all the telecom stocks, or at least all the tech stocks. France Telecom down sharply, Deutsche Telekom down sharply. And here's a quick glance at the Asian markets as well. We've got the Chinese New Year coming up, which is going to put a dampener on trading the next few days. That's all we got time for. Bye-bye.
Hello and welcome to our look at the world weather, and let's start by having a look at tropical cyclone Charlie. Now it's right in the middle of the Indian Ocean at the moment with gusts up to around 210 kilometres an hour. It should weaken as it moves slowly towards the west-southwest in the next few days. Towards the north, and there's a lot of fine weather across India at the moment, but down towards the south of India and across Sri Lanka there's some thick black clouds, some showers here, and we're likely to see further showers over the next few days. But for many areas it will be dry and bright. Temperatures in Delhi up as high as 21 degrees Celsius with plenty of sunshine around. And although there's some fine weather around across parts of Thailand and Indonesia, towards the south it is very unsettling. You can see a lot of cloud here on the satellite picture. Really has been very wet in some areas, and yet again there have been some landslides due to all that rain. And it's going to stay pretty unsettled too over the next few days. Also, this weather front is likely to bring some rain into parts of China, but for much of northern China, for Manchuria and for much of Japan, it's going to be dry and bright. Dry too in Sydney, where it is going to stay hot for the next couple of days. Temperatures on Wednesday as high as 42 degrees, that's Celsius. But in Melbourne, it should start to cool down for the tennis with 1 or 2 showers around. Certainly plenty of showers through Central and South Africa and indeed across Madagascar. Yet again, it's been very wet here and it's going to stay pretty wet over the next few days. We're also likely to see some rain in the northwest, and that's because of some weather fronts moving across Europe. Already we've got the cloud and the rain pushing its way across more central areas, heading its way in towards Germany and southern parts of Scandinavia, and there's now another batch of rain pushing across the United Kingdom and France. Now, tightly packed isobars and weather fronts around for the next couple of days. It is going to stay wet and windy, but over towards the east it should be dry and bright with high pressure around. A lot of fine weather across the United States and indeed across Canada. Just a few snow flurries in more northern areas. It'll also be dry and bright through central parts of South America, but it's going to be wet in the south. That's the weather.
One programme goes to the ends of the earth to bring you world-class holiday information. Holiday, next, on BBC World.
You've awakened to the true power of e-business. Do you have the software to manage it? If not, consider this your wake-up call. Our software manages more e-businesses than anyone else on Earth. Hello Tomorrow, we are Computer Associates, the software that manages e-business.
For you, there's no such thing as a closed door. For you, you have the key. In hundreds of cities, in countries all over this world, you make doors open and business happens. This you know, there are no obstacles. For you, you have the key. Diners Club International.
In Talking Movies this week, highlights from the Golden Globe Awards, the glitz, the hype, the glamour, the winners, and the films to have emerged as possible Oscar contenders.
Now on BBC World, Craig Doyle and the team are off on holiday.
On tonight's holiday, we take a closer look at the British love affair with the Mediterranean. It's a romance that spanned 4 decades, and let's be honest, any holiday fling that lasts that long surely deserves a whole programme dedicated to it. Also tonight, Annika Rice brushes up on her painting skills on the island of Malta. Jean Guha finds out if the appeal of Pelion on the Greek mainland has stood the test of time. And Sandra Hoggett leaves Casualty behind to go on a sailing holiday in Majorca. Love them or loathe them, the Spanish costas have been on the British tourist map since the early 60s, and they remain just as popular today. The Costa Brava was one of the original mass package holiday destinations. So I'm here to see what it is that keeps British families coming back year after year. For many, the 1960s meant the invasion of the Beatles. For the Costa Brava, it was the Brits. Having a milder climate than the Costa del Sol and only a 2-hour flight from the UK makes it an ideal location for a family holiday. I was staying at the Hotel Aqua Marina in Santa Susana, which, although the brochure claims is on the Costa Brava, actually falls just outside on the Costa Maresme. The hotel is huge, and it looks a bit like a cross between a shopping centre and a boat. Let's call it functional, shall we? Considering it's a 3-star hotel, it's quite surprising it's got air conditioning and a television. But this is a family room, and as you can see, it is quite cramped, so I hope you all get on well. But you don't need to worry, because with over 600 rooms, you won't be short of company. Now, choosing your hotel can be a bit of a daunting prospect, especially when all you have to go on is a bit of brochure spiel. So how does this hotel compare to what it says in here? This, like many brochures, gives the swimming pool particular attention. Although here I do think it's justified because it's a good size and there are enough sun loungers to go round. However, if the added comfort of a cushion is needed, it will cost extra. Surprisingly, it doesn't acknowledge the fact that there's a large arcade room which stays open until midnight. There's a gym and a sauna, but what it doesn't say in the brochure is you have to pay for it. And what the brochure fails to mention is that the hotel and the beach are separated by a train. It comes every 15 minutes. It's very noisy, but apparently you get quite used to it. The sandy beach in front of the hotel, at just over a mile long, is good enough for most people. But there are 2 sides to every Costa, so we asked the whole family from Oxford and the Wormsleys from Wokingham, also staying at the Aqua Marina, to check out other nearby beaches. The Wormsleys made use of the excellent public transport facilities and took a 10-minute train journey and half-an-hour bus ride to the popular tourist beach 7 miles away at Lorette de Mar. Meanwhile, the Halls hired a car and drove 4 miles to Santa Cristina, a local favourite, but off the tourist track as it's not served by public transport. So, what did the families think? First, I'm joined by Stephanie and Kelly Hall. Now, a little birdie tells me that you pair aren't really ones for hanging around the beach. You like to hang around the pool more. So how does this compare?
Well, It's nice. It's just out of the hotel. It's like the setting is really nice. You know, you've got all the rocks and you've got all the valley going up there, really. And the sea, it's clear as well, whereas down back by our beach is a bit dirty. Yeah. I think it's like a sort of where the locals come on their sort of day off or something, because they're all speaking in Spanish.
So marks out of 10, what would you give it?
Overall, I'd give the beach about 7 out of 10.
Not bad, but over in the busier resort of Lloret de Mar, the Wormsleys had totally thrown themselves into beach life. But what did Keith and Tom make of it?
It's great. It's great, yeah, it's a little packed, but it'll do. Water sports are excellent. They're really well run, there's loads to do.
It's better than the beach at the hotel because you can see through the water. It's a lot cleaner.
Back at the hotel, things were hotting up in the kitchen as the buffet beckoned. And with so many people, the queues weren't too bad at all.
Is there anyone who speaks English here tonight? Yeah!
Now, there's nightly entertainment at the hotel, and I was allegedly lucky enough to be a judge at the Miss Beach competition. Some over-enthusiastic contestants tried to swing my vote, the cheek, but it was all good, clean family fun. Well, yet again it's proven the package holiday works, but you should expect little more than the brochure actually offers. In fact, you can throw a pinch of salt at that. And I reckon after a couple of days, a trip out into the more traditional areas is not only a good idea, but a necessity. Malta may not be the first place you'd think of for a painting holiday, but Annika Wright packed her brushes and palette and joined a group of aspiring artists.
Based in the town of Balzan, just outside Valletta, the week-long course caters for artists of all abilities with no more than 12 people in the group. It's run by local artist Jenny Davis, and every morning there's an hour's tuition in one of the apartments before you're whisked off to the first location. We headed for the Upper Baraka Gardens.
The trouble with using watercolours in this heat is that obviously everything dries so quickly. And it's just such a different discipline to anything I'm used to. So I'm very much the novice here today.
So how are my fellow artists getting on?
I think it's a bit daunting to start with, but actually after the first day or so, when you've got into the swing of it, everyone's so nice, it doesn't matter. It's lovely.
I'm making such a pig's ear of this. It's tragic.
I think if you're uncomfortable, probably you do get on with it.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, that's fantastic. That's sort of lovely and splashy.
I've done about 5 or 6 paintings. Some people have just done one, some people a couple. Everyone's just worked at their own speed. I like to splosh around a bit, so I've been in heaven.
You don't have to paint every day, so on my one day off, I left my palette behind and went to seek inspiration in Valletta. Malta has had a turbulent past, and the Romans, the Arabs, the French and the British have all left their mark on this little island.
But many people consider it was the Knights of St. John that left behind the largest legacy. They commissioned literally hundreds of churches here in Malta. My favourite, I think, being St. John Co-Cathedral here in Valletta.
The cathedral is stunning, especially the ornate chapels, which each represent the different countries of the Knights of the Order. The highlight for me was the famous painting by the 16th century Italian artist Caravaggio, The Beheading of John the Baptist. The Maltese are clearly passionate about their churches, with over 300 on the island, and travelling around on the old 1950s buses left behind by the British makes exploring a lot more fun. So I decided to head 5 miles inland to Mostar, a busy town known for another famous church, the Mostar Dome.
The church has one of the broadest unsupported domes in the whole of Europe. It's so enormous that it can be seen from practically every corner in Malta. Moster's other claim to fame is that on June the 2nd, 1942, during World War II, a bomb actually hit this church while 300 people were inside taking mass. It pierced the dome there, it smashed off the walls and then rolled across the floor, and it failed to detonate, so miraculously no one was hurt at all.
This Mediterranean island provides enough inspiration to bring out the artistic talents in all of us, and on the final day's painting, I rejoined the group and visited Mdina. This magnificent walled city was once Malta's ancient capital and home to its aristocracy. So what more fitting way to travel around than a horse-drawn carriage?
Here in this location, we thought we've got 360 degrees of completely different views, really. And you can look down alleyways, you can look up alleyways. There are lanterns and wonderful things.
It's all going horribly wrong. I'm having a miserable afternoon. I just can't deal with these watercolours.
So don't forget to look for these big shapes. But you've got such lovely light in there. You don't want to lose that. That's beautiful. I think I'd like to start again, actually.
You've transformed your painting.
Well,
look at it.
No, what I did was I picked your colour and I added it to my painting. It's really helped my painting. But we're going to rename that colour. It's going to be called Annika's Red now.
If you are looking to go on a painting holiday, there's definitely a few tips before you actually send off your cheque. Make sure that the course is dealing in the medium you want to be painting in. That's fairly obvious. Check the artist who'll be teaching you. Check the size of your group. And also, obviously, location. Whatever your speciality is, go for that.
And don't forget, make sure it's fun.